Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Martech Masters. I'm here today with Daniel Ruby. He's the head of marketing at Demand Sage. Hey, Daniel, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Gabriel. How are you?
Perfect, perfect. Thank you for joining us. And I'm very excited about talking how we can improve HubSpot reports and if there's a better way to do it. Right? Is that what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, pretty much. HubSpot reporting, just kind of general marketing and sales and revenue reporting. And, in the world of SaaS, how do you get all of these disparate data points together and figure out what's actually going on in your revenue organization?
That's awesome. That's awesome. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Demand Sage?
Sure. So I'm the head of marketing at Demand Sage. I've basically been the first marketing boots on the ground for a variety of tech startups in the Boston area since like 2006. Just, kind of a do-it-all DIY market, digital marketing person. I really enjoy the fact that marketing is now a science as much as it is an art. And it's kind of funny because if I go back 10, 11, 12 years, I used to work for a guy who called marketing the last bastion of unaccountable spending. But, that's not true anymore. So I've seen over the course of the years as you start getting data, as you start getting anonymized and then, connecting web activities and social activities to your actual CRM and starting to see a full funnel where you can figure out, am I actually doing something useful? And I find it very rewarding both to do the kind of analytics to see if you're doing something useful, and then that kind of rush when you go, oh yeah, I got ROI. I'm actually making money. I'm actually providing value. It's a little bit of an adrenaline rush. Love it.
Definitely.
Um, yeah, I also teach at a local college. I teach one marketing course, which is fun.
Nice, nice.
Like
Always,
sharing
always,
them.
always good sharing with the next generations, right?
It is. It is.
Nice,
I
nice,
kind of
nice.
wish that somebody had been there to say, well, here's the textbook stuff, but here's what you're actually going to run into as you start doing the job.
Yeah, we've done a couple of speaking engagements with some local universities, and it's always super rewarding to see kids that are being taught certain things from books and specifics, and they're having that analytics class, but they don't know what HubSpot is, and all of a sudden we're opening their minds and saying, hey, by the way, analytics is all being done for you now. Go into data, go into analysis, and all these things that we're going to talk about today. So very, very exciting that you do that. Also, I love that you mentioned the art and the science. We consider ourselves to be right in the middle with all our artistic stuff, with video and creative stuff, but also all the data and every single integration that we can add to HubSpot to continue to gather more and more data. And let's talk a little bit about that. So you mentioned SaaS. Who do you guys solve for at Demand Sage? Is it who's your ideal customer? What are the best companies or the companies that you would say could take advantage of your software, and why?
So the way we look at it is we want to bring enterprise level business intelligence to kind of the SMB market.
Mm-hmm.
People who don't necessarily the have the resources, time or otherwise, to have a dedicated data scientist and somebody who is just spending 40 hours a week or more just pulling data in from different sources, combining them and coming up with the insights that they need. Because every SaaS tool that you look at, be it a CRM, be it a marketing automation suite, be it just a simple analytics tool, tells its own part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always going to be a manual step. And what we're trying to do is, for HubSpot users specifically right now, and then going forward as we work to integrate more data sources, is to try and remove as many of those manual steps as possible. Because each SaaS toolkit will not only tell a different part of the story, but each one has its own strengths and weaknesses. Each one has, parts of the story that it can tell and parts of the story that it can't tell. But when you look at a data set as robust as what you have with HubSpot, the data is there to tell the story. But oftentimes it's just kind of locked up because, to HubSpot's credit, they've done a great job of building out an analytics and reporting suite, but they're still constrained with, um, they have to work within the UX,
Of course.
and they have to productize everything. It's very hard to get a custom report to your custom business needs.
And I like that you're saying that you're bringing this to small businesses and medium businesses, because that's the other problem. Yes, you could invest in huge applications or data analysts that can put together those reports if you're a huge organization, but for small businesses they can never get to the insights, right? So it's all the data is there and it's amazing, and let's say they did a huge investment in HubSpot and they're doing the right thing. There's so much data that they can't possibly find the time or the knowledge, or have the experience to actually find insights from that data. Is that something that you guys can help with?
We can, yeah, and a lot of what we're trying to do is to distill this data into a comfortable platform, because
Mm-hmm.
everybody knows spreadsheets, everybody uses spreadsheets, and it's so I've worked with a bunch of different CRMs and a bunch of different automation suites. I've used Marketo, I've used Pardot, I've used HubSpot. I like HubSpot quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But what you find is each one has almost its own language for for like combing through your data, for manipulating your data, and for generating these insights. And we feel that you shouldn't have to be an expert in the language of the SaaS tool that you're using. So when you pull it into a spreadsheet, you kind of know what to expect. You know that it's going to come in rows and columns. You're going to be able to use your standard suite, just gargantuan suite of spreadsheet tools, be it Excel or Google Sheets, and gives you the opportunity to use your own expertise within a data set that is incredibly robust and is now unlocked from kind of an analytics and reporting UX.
That's awesome. And again, you mentioned some of the limitations of trying to create a custom report on HubSpot, right? Also, like you said, pretty much everybody that has done anything with data knows Excel or Google Sheets, because that's how we manipulate data and we try to create graphics and things like that. So it's good that you're bringing something into a familiar place. How does that compare to the reports that you get on HubSpot? Again, you're limited probably on the HubSpot, even though you have some reporting templates and a lot of cool things that you can do. How can you help people get better reports on a spreadsheet? What are some of the tools and the things that you can do for them to simplify that, even though they have HubSpot and they could do some of those things inside the tool?
Sure. Well, a lot of it is just kind of the ability to pull different data sources together, even within HubSpot. If you're doing custom reporting in HubSpot, you're limited by how many different kinds of objects you can combine, or um, how many different data points within an object, the object itself, you can compare, and how you can visualize those comparisons. I think every HubSpot user has many times had the experience of saying, well, I need to get an answer to this business question. How am I going to do it? And they end up, you can do it in HubSpot if you can come up with a creative way to combine, automation and, both static and active lists, and bring them together in this kind of hodgepodge that comes up with the answer. But if you look at it, if you're able to get that raw data into a spreadsheet, it's a lot easier to say, okay, well, I need this data, this data point, this data point, and this data point. And they're all available within the confines of a spreadsheet, as opposed to saying, well, this one I have to generate with an automation function. This one I have to set some parameters for an active list. And this one, I'm going to create a custom field at the contact level and populate it with something else. And that way but if you've got the underlying data, then you can just do that in a spreadsheet. And what's nice about, spreadsheets today are not, what they were 20 years ago. And we have one of our clients is on record. We've been kind of collecting quotes lately. And one of our clients is on record as saying, look, everybody at some point gives up on fighting with their SaaS tools reporting suite, exports a CSV, pulls it into Excel, pulls it into Google Sheets, and then just does it themselves. And there's a reason for that. It's because spreadsheets work really well. They give you this almost unlimited level of flexibility. And with something like a Google Sheets, now it's got add-ons like Demand Sage, so you don't have to create that CSV every time you need to update your report. The data updates nightly with us, and there's already existing connectors as well. So one of the things that I run into a lot as a marketer using HubSpot is, because I don't use HubSpot CMS, I have trouble getting good, even anonymized web traffic and web analytics data. But what I can do is I can use Google's own Google Analytics thing, pull the Google Analytics data into my Google Sheets in the same sheet as I'm using Demand Sage to pull in my HubSpot data, combine that and create a dashboard that gives me a full view of my funnel from anonymous traffic all the way down to closed won deals.
And you don't have to update that regularly or create this report every time you see it, because Demand Sage is helping you update that regularly, right?
Exactly. Yeah. The only thing that I have to do is, you have to manually tell the Google Analytics plugin to rerun.
Of course.
But then it just updates all of the data everywhere it is, and all of your connected sheets are there with all of your up-to-date data, and it's right because you build it once, and then it's right.
That's awesome. And of course, it makes it easier to create customized reports that you can never find anywhere else. So that's the key to it and the value to it. So you mentioned something about insights, and one of the things we always talk about is the difference between reporting and insights, right? It's easy to find reports and create reports in all these tools, but the insights are the hard things to find. They're the pieces of content or data or the decisions that we can make from data that will actually create a positive impact on the different things that we do for marketing, sales, or whatever it is. So what are some of the insights that are hard to get, the ones that are hard to find?
So one of the big insights that's really hard to find, I think, in HubSpot is what actually contributes to a closed won deal. Not just, HubSpot is great about telling you, first action, the first source that leads to a closed won deal. They're really good at telling you a specific campaign that began a trip to a closed won deal, but everything in the middle that influences the different steps along the pipeline can be really hard to come by. Do you give value to a piece of content or an outbound email campaign, or even a lead source that brings another person into a deal halfway through, and that person happens to be, if you're using an account-based marketing framework, that person happens to be the decision maker. How do you know what activities you're using to bring in decision makers? How do you know what activities you're using to really influence the deal from beginning to end? And beyond that, how do you know what are all the different demographic and firmographic data points that kind of correlate to somebody moving to a deal moving along the pipeline? And can you hear my dog behind me just going, wow, wow, wow?
By the way, this is perfect. I had some noise in the background here too, and you had your dog doing some funny things. But we are all about having family members as part of of our of our video shoots, so no problems at all. As long as you can keep talking, we're fine.
I can keep talking. It's and all of that data is available in HubSpot, but the constraints of how many different data points you can look at in a given report, and the constraints of amount around how can you find data points that roll up to associated objects. So the associated, you look at a company, you look at the associated deals, you look at the associated contacts. How do you really kind of compile those rolled up data points into something actionable, something that can inform your decision making going forward? And that's something that we try to do. So we do a lot of with Demand Sage, we've got a couple of different ways that you can manipulate your data. And one of those ways is with a report of kind of best practice templates, or a library of pre-built one-click best practice templates and dashboards and reports. And part of the process that we do is we will calculate unique metrics. So, for example, when you're looking at one of our deal reports, you may find these calculated metrics of like the most common source, or the most common piece of content, or that was consumed by contact associated with a deal or with a company. And so things like that. And we're always trying to build more of these, because the nice thing about it is, we're not constrained by a UX, so we can build these just pure data calculated metrics that can then feed into either the reports or our no code table builders. And the same with the reports. And because we are reasonably early stage, we're still at the point where customer feedback can become custom reports that we build and then can productize and add to the report library. And our offering is free to use, and we don't sell or share any data. The library of reports that we offer is all free to use. We are we're working on building a tool that can really give this level of actionable insight that you would traditionally need an expensive and well-staffed BI stack and team to come up with.
Of course. It's interesting that you mentioned, the most common source and things like that, because that's the kind of report that, as a CEO and as building business development, that's my role. One of the spreadsheets that I have is every year or every quarter or every 6 months, we go through, okay, all the customers we closed in the last 6 months and the last year, where are they coming from? Is the source HubSpot, SEO, events? And then we're like, okay, and are they good customers? So I add things to my spreadsheet. I rate my customers by how happy they are, by how happy we are with them, and all of that is data manipulation that I do on a Google Sheet. So at the end of the day, what you're saying is what we're all trying to do anyways. So it helps us get to that step a lot faster. You mentioned that you are adding Google Analytics, for example, as a source. What are some of the other data sources that you envision connecting with HubSpot to make even better data or create more insightful data from spreadsheet?
So that's always a challenge, right? You start with HubSpot because HubSpot does a very good job of pulling together a bunch of different data sources. You've got your marketing email, you've got your sales email, you've got native connections to Facebook advertising, LinkedIn advertising, Google ads. But there's only so many connectors that HubSpot can really justify building themselves. So we're trying to make it very easy to get this full view of the funnel from top to bottom. We're looking to kind of incorporate your different sources of demand. So beyond just the big social networks and Google, what are the advertising the advertising vehicles that people are using that could potentially pull in. And then, because the bottom line is that you want to know how your actions as a marketer, or how your revenue actions with an entire sales and marketing organization are translating not just to the closed won deals, not just to a single deal value, but lifetime value of the customer, recurring revenue. And because so many of the organizations that use HubSpot are SaaS providers themselves, how do you come up with ROI numbers with monthly recurring revenue? And so we're looking at things like integrating Stripe as a data source, or integrating other payment options, and potentially we're also looking at Salesforce, because there's so much synergy between if you use HubSpot for your CMS and or your marketing automation suite, but Salesforce is still your CRM of record. How do you mix those data points? They've got their own native integrations, but that's kind of a fairly opaque integration in and of itself. So how do you come up with insights into the combination of maybe all of your deals data in Salesforce and your marketing data in HubSpot? So that's where we're looking to go with a lot of these.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So when you're talking about marketing and sales, what kind of reporting questions do you usually get from these two different organizations?
So it's interesting. They've got kind of different perspectives on what I consider to be the same thing. How are we generating revenue? Marketing tends to want to know what activities, what sources, what campaigns are generating MQLs.
Mm-hmm.
And sales wants to know, well, what are my activities that are taking it, that are going from SQL to revenue? And how can I, not only how can I increase those activities, but how do I not justify necessarily, but how do I determine, compensation for my reps? How do I determine whether or not a rep is uh, doing their job well or not? And you can look at like raw activities, you can look at stuff like that, but in the end, a lot of times what I've run into in the past is, sales will come to an attribution vendor of some sort, or a RevOps vendor, and say, how do I blame marketing? And marketing comes to the same vendor and says, how do I blame sales?
Mm-hmm.
And we believe that neither of those is valuable in any way, shape, or form, because if one side is not pulling their weight, then neither side is pulling their weight. So we kind of approach it as a more holistic look at revenue, at the revenue funnel. Yes, marketing is more active in the early part of the funnel, but their activities, marketing's responsibilities don't end at MQL being sent over to sales. And likewise, sales, their responsibility does not just begin when marketing plops an MQL in their lap. So we work very hard to, I know the word holistic is so dramatically overused these
Mm-hmm.
days, but it's kind of a reasonable word to use to say, all right, your revenue ops, your revenue organization has to view things holistically. So, what kind of marketing generated leads work best for particular sales rep? What kind of activities take a particular customer profile across the finish line? So that's kind of how we approach it, and that's the questions are always the questions from both sales and marketing leadership, because they're almost always really good organizations, are, well, how do I do better
Mm-hmm.
to improve the bottom line?
Definitely, and help each other and work together. Right at the end of the day, a lot of organizations are turning marketing and sales and customer service into RevOps, right? And that's kind of like the new word that everybody wants to use. And at the end of the day, it's what the end goal should be. We're all one. We're all working towards revenue and keeping customers happy and keeping customers working with us. So how can you guys help organizations and marketing and sales team working more together rather than fighting each other like you were talking about?
So part of it is actually, oddly enough, the spreadsheet itself, because when was the last time you spoke to a sales rep who was particularly comfortable getting into HubSpot and digging around to try and figure out? It's
Never happens.
It never
It
happened.
doesn't matter how many years you train them. And again, this has nothing to do with them not getting the information. It's what they're familiar with and the time that they have and the goals that they have. Sales teams are more rapid pace. They need to get things done. They only dedicate time to things that create an impact. They're only working with the easiest, fastest, deals. So all of that affects the way they work every day. So if, it feels like we're continuously teaching how to do a filter on HubSpot to find some opportunities. So at the end of the day, what we do is we enable some people internally that are more savvy to do that, but we end up doing it ourselves, and it's part of the value that we create. But they all go back, and I know you were going to go there, to a spreadsheet.
I'll go back to a spreadsheet. Yeah. Everything goes back to a spreadsheet,
Yeah.
because no matter what if you're in sales, if you're in marketing, if you're in finance, you are comfortable in a spreadsheet.
Definitely. I was going to ask you what's the difference between, HubSpot as a reporting tool and Demand Sage as a reporting tool and something like DataBox or tools like DataBox. And you can definitely answer that. But I was thinking the combination of all of these is perfect, because we can take data from HubSpot, put it into Demand Sage, manipulate and add data, and then actually graphically show it into DataBox with the DataBox Google Sheets integration, and you have an amazing tool that you probably can't pay for.
Yeah. And I mean, and not just DataBox, Sheets has that native integration with Google, oh God, their visualization.
Yeah.
The
I forgot about that too. I can Google it right now.
You can Google. But yeah, you've got a lot of people use that. And, that's kind of the beauty of Sheets as a platform, is it is in and of itself a platform with so many different.
Data Studio.
Google Data Studio. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you want to visualize something in a particular way, build a live updating, visually stunning report. Well, you were probably going to pull the data into a spreadsheet, manipulate it, and then shove it into something else anyways. So why belabor the point? Why force yourself into all of this manual work when you can do it once? Use Demand Sage to make sure that the data from HubSpot is always up to date. Use Google Sheets to power a bunch of wherever you want that to output. Chances are there's going to be a reasonably straightforward way to do it. You could output it into Coda. You could output it into Notion. You could, it's a spreadsheet.
Definitely. You can integrate it with pretty much anything.
Yeah.
Definitely. And especially in Google Sheets. Now Google Sheets is integrated with pretty much everything out there. This has been awesome. Thank you, Daniel, for all the information and sharing all of this. I know a lot of people are going to be very excited about being able to download HubSpot data into spreadsheets and manipulate it, especially like you said, marketing and sales team working together, being able to look at the data in one place and be able to manipulate it and create specifically custom reports that they're familiar with already. So thank you for sharing all of this. Anything else you want to share? I know you have some product updates and stuff like that, but tell us more about that.
Well, our product is always evolving, and we're always happy to, if there's something that we don't currently solve for a HubSpot user, reach out and let us know. And chances are it's something that a bunch of people would use, and we'd be happy to build it for you and then add it to our report library. We just finished a product hunt launch. and that was a lot of fun. So, it's we're continuing to grow. We're continuing to add more value. And frankly, I joined the team because I had worked with the founders before. The founders were the founders from Localytics.
Mm.
And, I was their first marketing boots on the ground a decade ago. And because I've spent my entire career dealing with the challenges that DemandSage, solves.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of nice to be working on a product that, I not only believe in, but I use in my day-to-day life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Daniel, thank you very much again for sharing all of this. We'll share all the information and the links to DemandSage. If you are a HubSpot user, if you're using HubSpot for marketing and sales, this is a no-brainer. Download your data on a regular basis into a Google Sheets or a spreadsheet and then manipulate it. This is, I can't wait to have a lot of fun with this and share with a lot of our customers. So thank you, Daniel, again, for sharing this with us, okay?
My pleasure, Gabriel. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Take it easy and have a good day, all right? Stay safe.
Thanks, you too.
See you. Bye-bye.